I'm Pamela Morrison, 62 years old, and on what should have been one of the happiest days of my life, I woke up completely bald. My future daughter-in-law Grace had drugged me and shaved my head while I slept, leaving a cruel note. "Now you have the look that suits you, you ridiculous old woman." The viciousness shocked me to my core. Thank God she did this on the very day I planned to transfer $120 million from my late husband's inheritance to them. During my wedding toast, everything changed. I'd love to know where you're watching from today. If you believe in karma and justice, please hit that like button and subscribe for more true stories of standing up against cruelty. Trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. Robert and I met in college. He was the brilliant computer science major with big dreams, and I was the art history student who fell for his kind eyes and gentle spirit. We married young, just 23, with nothing to our names except student debt and enormous ambition. Those early years were lean but beautiful. Our first apartment was tiny with mismatched furniture from thrift stores and a kitchen barely big enough for one person. Robert worked long hours coding for a startup while I taught art at a local elementary school. "We're investing in our future," Robert would say when we had to skip vacations or buy secondhand clothes. He was right in ways we couldn't have imagined. The startup he joined early as their fifth employee exploded in growth during the tech boom of the 1990s. By the time our son Kevin was born, Robert had equity in a company that would eventually become DigitalSphere, one of the most successful tech companies of the early internet era. Our wealth accumulated gradually, then suddenly. I remember the day Robert came home, sat me down at our kitchen table, a real dining set by then but still modest, and told me the company was going public. "Pam," he said, using his special nickname for me, "we're going to be worth over $10 million. We sat in stunned silence, then burst into tears. For a couple who had once celebrated finding a $20 bill in an old coat pocket, it was incomprehensible. As the company grew, so did our finances. 10 million became 50, then over 200 million as Robert moved up to become Chief Innovation Officer. But Robert never changed at his core. He drove the same car for 15 years, insisted we raise Kevin with chores and summer jobs, and always said, "Money doesn't build character, hard work does." Kevin was our only child, born after years of trying and 2 heartbreaking miscarriages. Perhaps we spoiled him a bit. What parents wouldn't after such a journey? He had every opportunity: the best schools, summer camps, travel experiences, and college without student loans. But despite our efforts to instill Robert's work ethic in him, Kevin struggled to find his path. Where Robert had been focused and determined, Kevin was scattered and easily discouraged. He bounced between college majors, eventually graduating with a general business degree, but no particular passion. He started several entrepreneurial ventures that always began with enthusiasm and requests for seed funding, but inevitably fizzled out when the work became challenging. He'll find his way. Robert always said, maintaining unshakable faith in our son. He just needs time to figure out what drives him. Robert was diagnosed with aggressive pancreatic cancer when Kevin was 28. Those final 18 months showed me new depths to my husband's character. Even while fighting for his life, he meticulously organized our finances, updated his will, and created detailed plans for the family wealth. "Listen, Pamela," he told me during one of his clearer days in the hospital, "I've watched how Kevin handles money. He's not ready for his full inheritance. The sudden wealth would do more harm than good." Together with our longtime attorney Jackson Harrington, Robert established a trust with me as the primary trustee. Kevin would receive his inheritance in structured portions, with the bulk transferring when he turned 40, unless I determined he was demonstrating financial responsibility earlier. Robert was protecting our son from himself. "I know this puts you in a difficult position," Robert apologized, squeezing my hand with what little strength he had left. "But you've always been the backbone of this family. You'll know when he's ready." After Robert died, Kevin fell into a depression that concerned me deeply. He moved back home for several months, sleeping until afternoon and barely leaving his old bedroom. No amount of gentle encouragement or suggested therapy seemed to help. Then, as suddenly as it had descended, the clouds seemed to lift. A year after his father's death, Kevin announced he was attending a charity gala for the city's art museum and asked if I wanted to join him. "I think Dad would want us to start living again," he said, and I felt a rush of pride and relief. It was at that gala that Kevin met Grace Larson. I remember seeing them together for the first time. Kevin animated in a way I hadn't seen since before his father's illness, and Grace laughing at something he'd said, her hand resting on his arm. She was striking, tall and model-thin, with perfectly styled blonde hair and the kind of polished appearance that speaks of expensive tastes and meticulous self-care. Grace worked in luxury real estate, selling multi-million-dollar properties to the city's elite. When Kevin introduced us, she was charm personified, complimenting my philanthropic work with the museum and asking thoughtful questions about my late husband. "Kevin has told me so much about his father," she said, her eyes conveying perfect sympathy. "What an incredible legacy he left both in business and in raising such a wonderful son." I was completely taken in. After months of watching Kevin struggle here was this sophisticated, accomplished woman who seemed to appreciate him fully. When Kevin began spending every available moment with Grace, I was delighted. When they moved in together after just 3 months, I quieted my concerns about the speed of their relationship. And when Kevin proposed after only 6 months, presenting Grace with a ring that cost more than most people's homes, I smiled and welcomed her to the family despite the unease settling in my stomach. Looking back, there were warning signs I chose to ignore. The way Grace's eyes lingered on the artwork in our home, asking pointed questions about value and provenance. Her casual inquiries about family finances and estate planning. The subtle shift in Kevin's spending habits. The new sports car, the suddenly expanded wardrobe of designer clothes, the exclusive club memberships. But I was so happy to see Kevin engaged with life again that I pushed aside my concerns. When he announced their engagement with Grace's enormous diamond sparkling on her finger, I toasted them with champagne and silenced the voice in my head that whispered, "Robert would be worried." After all, I told myself Grace made Kevin happy, and wasn't that what mattered most? The wedding planning began immediately, and it quickly became apparent that Grace had expensive taste with little concern for budgets. She hired a celebrity wedding planner whose clients included film stars and tech billionaires, insisting only the best would do for her special day. "We've reserved the Grand Imperial Hotel for the reception," Grace announced during one of our early planning meetings. "They only do a few weddings each year, so we were lucky to get it." Lucky indeed, with a minimum starting price of $150,000 for the venue alone. When I gently mentioned the budget we had discussed, Grace's smile never wavered. "Kevin and I feel that this is a once-in-a-lifetime celebration," she said smoothly. "We'd like to upgrade a few elements of the wedding. Nothing excessive, of course." Those few elements quickly multiplied. The simple, elegant affair Kevin and I had initially discussed transformed into an extravaganza with a guest list of over 300 people, many of whom were Grace's industry contacts that Kevin had never met. The flowers alone cost more than my first house. I agreed to increase the wedding budget to $500,000, an amount that seemed absurdly generous to me, but merely adequate to Grace. Even then, she constantly pushed for more. "The photographer we want is a bit over budget," she'd say, "but he shoots for Vogue. Surely we want the best memories of this special day." Or, "The band we've chosen played at the governor's daughter's wedding. They're a bit more than we allocated, but can we really put a price on the perfect atmosphere?" Each time I found myself reluctantly agreeing, not wanting to create tension. But Grace's true character began revealing itself in small moments when Kevin wasn't present. I witnessed her reduce a florist to tears over a sample arrangement that wasn't precisely the shade of white she'd specified. "I'm not paying premium prices for subpar work," she snapped. "Do you know who's attending this wedding? We can't have tablescapes that look thrown together by amateurs." At the menu tasting, she spoke to the chef like he was a disobedient child rather than an award-winning culinary artist. "This sauce is too acidic, and the plating is clumsy. I expected better from a restaurant with your reputation." When I suggested she might want to speak more kindly to people providing services for her wedding, her response chilled me. "These people are being well compensated for their work," she said dismissively. "Besides, they need to understand the standard of excellence this event requires. Kevin and I aren't just anybody." The shift in her behavior toward me was subtle at first. When Kevin was present, Grace was the perfect future daughter-in-law, attentive, affectionate, including me in conversations. But when he stepped away, the temperature dropped noticeably. "That dress is certainly comfortable looking," she commented when I showed up for a planning meeting in a simple linen outfit. "I guess at your age style becomes less important." Or when discussing mother of the groom attire, "We should find something slimming for you. Navy is good for hiding figure flaws." These little digs increased in frequency and sharpness as the wedding approached. I tried to connect with Grace, inviting her to lunch or afternoon tea, genuinely wanting to build a relationship with the woman my son loved. Each attempt was either declined due to her crazy schedule or accepted then canceled last minute. The real turning point came 6 weeks before the wedding. I was dropping off some family photos Kevin had requested for a slideshow when I overheard Grace on the phone in their kitchen. Not realizing I had been let in by the housekeeper, she was speaking freely. "The old lady is driving me crazy with her opinions," Grace was saying to someone. "But we're almost there. Kevin says she's planning to transfer a significant portion of the inheritance after the wedding." A pause. "At least $100 million from what we can tell. Once that's done, we can start creating some distance. Buy that property in Aspen we talked about." Another pause. "No, she has no idea." "Oh, Kevin's got her wrapped around his finger. You know how these doting mothers are with their precious sons." I stood frozen, my heart hammering in my chest. When Grace emerged from the kitchen and saw me, she didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. She simply ended her call with a quick, "Gotta go," and greeted me with the same artificial smile she always wore. "Pamela, I didn't hear you come in. Those must be the photos for the slideshow. Perfect timing." I handed over the envelope wordlessly, making an excuse about a headache to leave quickly. In my car, hands shaking on the steering wheel, I finally acknowledged what I had suspected for months. Grace was after the family fortune, not my son's heart. That evening, Kevin called to ask if we could have dinner the following night. "Just you, me, and Grace," he said. "There's something important we want to discuss." The important discussion turned out to be exactly what I feared. Over expensive steaks at Kevin's favorite restaurant, my son and his fiancée broached the subject of his inheritance. "Mom, Grace and I have been talking about our future plans." Kevin began reaching for Grace's hand across the table. "We have some exciting investment opportunities and ideas for our life together." Grace nodded encouragingly as Kevin continued. "We were wondering about the timeline for my inheritance. Dad always wanted me to build something meaningful, and now with Grace's expertise in real estate and my business background, we have some really promising ventures in mind." "What sort of ventures?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Grace jumped in smoothly. "We've identified several luxury development opportunities that could triple the initial investment within 5 years. And we're looking at a stunning property in Aspen that would be both a personal residence and a high-end rental when we're not using it." I studied my son's face, searching for Robert in his features. He had his father's eyes, but none of the wisdom I'd seen in them. "Your father structured the inheritance very specifically," I reminded him gently. "The bulk of it comes to you at 40, with my discretion as trustee to release funds earlier if appropriate." "But you can authorize transfers now, right?" Kevin pressed. "As trustee," I nodded slowly. "I can, and I've been considering a wedding gift." I paused, making a decision in that moment. "I was planning to transfer $120 million to your trust after the wedding. It seems like a good time to give you a significant portion while maintaining the structure your father envisioned." Their faces lit up with poorly concealed excitement. Grace actually clasped her hands together like a child promised a treat. "That's incredibly generous, Mom," Kevin said, his relief palpable. "There would be some oversight provisions," I added carefully. "As your father wanted." Grace's smile faltered slightly. "Oversight. Just standard trust protections," I explained. "Major investments would need trustee approval for the first 3 years. It's what Robert specifically requested." I saw a flash of something cold in Grace's eyes before she composed her features. "Of course we understand," she said smoothly, "though I hope you know we're quite capable of managing our own finances." "I'm sure you are," I replied evenly. "This is simply honoring Robert's wishes." That night, lying awake in the home Robert and I had shared for 30 years, I wrestled with my concerns. Was I being unfair to Grace? overprotective of the wealth Robert and I had built? Or was I seeing clearly what my son could not? The next morning, I called Jackson, our attorney, and asked him to prepare the trust transfer documents for after the wedding, complete with the oversight provisions Robert had specified. "I'll need them ready to sign on the wedding day," I told him. "I want to make this gift to Kevin and Grace, but I need to do it the right way." The week before the wedding was a whirlwind of final preparations. Despite my misgivings about Grace, I was determined to support my son's happiness. I had my hair done in an elegant updo for the rehearsal dinner planned for the wedding morning and bought a beautiful silver gown that even Grace had approved of during a rare moment of genuine connection. "You'll look lovely, Pamela," she had said when I tried it on. Very appropriate and dignified. The night before the wedding, after the rehearsal dinner, Grace surprised me by coming to my room at the hotel where the wedding party was staying. "I brought you some chamomile tea," she said, holding out a steaming cup. "A little peace offering. I know we've had our moments during the planning, but I want us to start fresh tomorrow, for Kevin's sake." Touched by the gesture, I accepted the tea and her apology. We chatted for a few minutes about final wedding details while I sipped the soothing drink. "Get some rest," Grace said as she left. "Tomorrow's a big day for all of us." I remember feeling unusually drowsy as I prepared for bed, attributing it to the emotional day and the calming tea. As I drifted off to sleep, my last thought was of Kevin as a little boy and how proud Robert would be of the man he'd become. I had no idea that by morning, everything would change. The morning of my son's wedding day, I woke with a strange heaviness in my body. My mouth felt dry, my thoughts foggy. I blinked several times trying to orient myself in the hotel room that had been reserved for immediate family. Something felt wrong, but in my groggy state, I couldn't immediately identify what. I pushed myself up from the pillow and swung my legs over the side of the bed. The wedding was at 4 o'clock, but as mother of the groom, I had a full morning scheduled. Breakfast with Kevin, final checks with the wedding planner, and most importantly, my hair appointment at 11 to style the elegant updo I'd planned for the ceremony. When I stood and walked toward the bathroom, my head felt oddly light, almost weightless. I switched on the bathroom light and faced the mirror. The scream that left my body didn't sound human. It couldn't be real what I was seeing. It had to be a nightmare. I raised trembling hands to my head, expecting to feel my silver gray hair, the hair I'd always worn shoulder length and styled carefully for important occasions. Instead, my fingers met bare scalp. Every single strand of my hair was gone. I was completely, utterly bald. The room spun around me as I grasped the edge of the bathroom counter to steady myself. That's when I saw it, a folded note placed prominently on the marble surface. With shaking hands, I opened it and read the neatly handwritten message. "Now you have the look that suits you, you ridiculous old woman. Enjoy the wedding. G." The cruelty of it knocked the breath from my lungs. I slid down to the cold tile floor, the note clutched in my hand as the full horror of what had happened washed over me. Grace had done this. She had put something in my tea last night. That unusual drowsiness suddenly made terrible sense. And while I slept, she had shaved my head. On my son's wedding day. The humiliation was overwhelming. How could I possibly attend the wedding like this? 300 guests would see me bald, would know I had been attacked in this way. The whispers, the stares, the pity and shock on their faces. I couldn't bear it. And Kevin, my sweet boy. How could I tell him what his bride had done? It would devastate him, might even end the wedding. Despite everything, I didn't want to ruin his day. As the initial shock began to subside, other emotions surfaced, rage, betrayal, and a cold clarity about exactly who Grace was and what she was capable of. The woman who would do this to me, drug me, and shave my head the night before my son's wedding, was not someone who should have access to the family fortune. She was not someone who should be married to my son. My hands still shaking, I reached for my phone and called the one person I knew would help without judgment, my younger sister, Eleanor. "Ellie," I said when she answered, my voice breaking. "I need you. Something terrible has happened." 30 minutes later, Eleanor burst into my hotel room, already dressed for the wedding in a blue cocktail dress. The moment she saw me, her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God, Pamela," she gasped. What happened to you?" I handed her the note, watching as her expression shifted from shock to white-hot fury. "That evil witch," Eleanor hissed. "We're calling the police right now." "This is assault. She drugged you, Pam. She could have done anything to you while you were unconscious." "No police," I said firmly. "Not yet. Not today." "Are you serious? Look what she did to you." "I know," I said, touching my bare scalp again in disbelief. "But if I involve the police now, the wedding will be canceled. Kevin will be humiliated in front of everyone he knows. I can't do that to him." "So you're just going to let her get away with this?" Eleanor demanded. "Show up at the wedding bald and pretend everything is fine." I took a deep breath, straightening my shoulders. "No, I'm not going to let her get away with anything, but I'm going to handle this my way. First, I need your help finding a wig, a good one immediately." Eleanor stared at me for a long moment, then nodded decisively. "Meredith Lowe. She owns that high-end wig boutique downtown, the one that works with cancer patients. I know her from the hospital fundraising committee. I'm calling her right now." While Eleanor made the call, I examined the note again, then carefully placed it in a plastic bag from the hotel bathroom amenities. Evidence. I took photos of my shaved head from multiple angles, documenting what had been done to me. Then I called Jackson Harrington. "Jackson, there's been a change of plans with the trust transfer," I said when he answered. "I won't be signing anything today." "Is everything all right, Pamela?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "No, but it will be. Can you come to the wedding? I need you there with the documents, but not for the reason we originally planned." After explaining the situation, I made one final call, to Dr. Patricia Way, our longtime family physician. "I need to know what might have been in that tea," I explained, "and I need something to help me get through this day with clarity and strength." By some miracle, within 2 hours, my hotel room had been transformed into an emergency response center. Meredith arrived with 3 high-quality wigs, similar to my natural hair color and style. Dr. Way came with a test kit for the teacup I'd preserved and prescribed a mild anti-anxiety medication that would keep me calm without affecting my judgment. Eleanor helped me try on wigs, finally selecting a silvery bob that looked surprisingly natural. "You actually look elegant," she said, adjusting it slightly. "Different, but still you." A glint of steel entered her eyes. "Now tell me the plan. How are we going to destroy this woman?" For the first time since waking to my nightmare, I smiled. With dignity, evidence, and perfect timing, Grace thinks she's humiliated me into hiding. She expects me to either not show up at all or to appear devastated and diminished. She has no idea who she's dealing with. As I dressed in my silver mother-of-the-groom gown, I felt a strength flowing through me that reminded me of Robert. He had always admired my quiet resilience, what he called my steel core beneath the softness. Today, Grace would discover that core for herself. I looked in the mirror at my transformed reflection, the elegant wig, the carefully applied makeup, the dignified gown. I looked every inch the wealthy, composed mother of the groom. But inside, I had made a decision that would change everything. The $120 million would not be transferred today, and before this wedding was over, my son would know exactly who he was marrying. The Gothic Revival Church looked like something from a fairy tale, with sunlight streaming through stained glass windows and casting rainbow patterns across the white roses and silver ribbons decorating every pew. I arrived with Eleanor 40 minutes before the ceremony composed, and elegant in my silver gown and new hairstyle. Several guests complimented me on my sophisticated bob, commenting that the new cut took years off my appearance. If they noticed anything strained in my smile, they attributed it to the emotions of the day. Mother of the groom, watching her only son marry. How could she not be emotional? I found Kevin in a side room, handsome in his tuxedo, nervous energy radiating from him as his best man helped adjust his tie. "Mom," he exclaimed when he saw me, his face lighting up. "You look beautiful. Your hair looks amazing like that." The innocent comment sent a wave of pain through me, but I maintained my smile. "Thank you, darling. Are you ready for your big day?" "More than ready," he said, hugging me. "I can't wait to start our life together. Grace she's everything I've ever wanted." I held him a moment longer than usual, wondering if this would be the last time he looked at me with such uncomplicated love. By the end of the day, everything would be different. The ceremony itself was a blur of organ music vows and ritualized moments. I sat in the front row, my back straight, my expression serene, watching as my son pledged his life to a woman who had drugged and assaulted his mother just hours earlier. When the minister asked if anyone objected to the union, I felt Eleanor tense beside me, but I remained still. My moment would come, but not here, not now. After the ceremony, guests moved to the Grand Imperial Hotel for the reception. The ballroom had been transformed into a winter wonderland of crystal silver and white flowers. It was breathtaking and obscenely expensive, a showcase not of love, but of conspicuous consumption. I took my place in the receiving line beside Kevin, accepting congratulations and well wishes from guests with gracious smiles. When Grace saw me, her eyes widened in momentary shock. Clearly she had expected me to be absent or visibly devastated. The sight of me looking elegant and composed threw her off balance. "Pamela," she said, her voice tight, "you changed your hair. It's different." "Yes," I replied calmly. "Sometimes unexpected changes can be quite revealing, don't you think?" A flash of uncertainty crossed her face before she recovered her poise. But throughout the receiving line, I caught her throwing confused glances my way, clearly trying to understand how I had managed to salvage my appearance after her sabotage. During a lull in the receiving line, I noticed Grace in an intense whispered argument with one of her bridesmaids, a thin woman with sharp features who kept shaking her head and gesturing angrily. I moved closer, pretending to adjust a floral arrangement. "You said she'd be devastated," the bridesmaid hissed. "That she'd either not show up or look ridiculous. Now she's here looking perfectly fine, and I risked a criminal charge for nothing." "Shut up, Melissa," Grace snapped. "Someone will hear you. I don't know how she fixed it so quickly, but it doesn't matter. By tomorrow we'll have the money transferred and can proceed with the plan." "I'd better get my commission as promised," Melissa muttered. "That was beyond messed up what we did." I stepped away, my suspicions confirmed. Grace had enlisted help for her vicious plan. I made a mental note of the bridesmaid's name, Melissa, another detail for later. Jackson Harrington arrived during the cocktail hour, distinguished in his tailored suit, carrying a leather portfolio that I knew contained the trust transfer documents. I met him in a quiet corner of the ballroom. "Everything is prepared as you requested," he said, his voice low. "Are you certain you want to proceed this way, Pamela? There would be less public damage if we handled this privately." "I'm certain," I replied. "This isn't just about the money, Jackson. It's about protecting my son from a woman who has shown her true character in the cruelest possible way. He deserves to know who he's married before it's too late." Jackson nodded gravely. "Robert would be proud of your courage. He always said you were the strongest person he knew." "I haven't felt very strong lately," I admitted. "But today, I don't have a choice." As guests found their seats for dinner, I noticed a police officer in uniform discreetly entering the ballroom and speaking with the hotel manager. Eleanor had arranged this, not a full police response that would disrupt the wedding, but an officer to take my statement and document the evidence while events proceeded. I excused myself and spent 15 minutes in a private room showing the officer my shaved head beneath the wig, the note from Grace, and the teacup that would be tested for drugs. "This is a serious assault, ma'am," the officer said, his expression grim. "You have the right to press charges." "And I will," I assured him, "but not until after the reception. I need to handle something important first." When I returned to the ballroom, Kevin sought me out, his face flushed with happiness and champagne. "Mom, this is the best day of my life," he said, hugging me tightly. "Thank you for everything. The wedding, your support, all of it. Dad would have loved today." My heart broke a little at the mention of Robert. "Your father wanted your happiness more than anything in the world," I said softly. "That's all I want too, Kevin." "I know," he said earnestly. "And Grace makes me so happy. I can't wait for you two to become closer. I know you'll love her as much as I do once you really get to know her." I smiled sadly, touching his cheek. "I hope things work out exactly as they should, sweetheart." The dinner service began, 5 elaborate courses with wine pairings for each. I barely touched my food, maintaining my composure through sheer determination. Beside me, Eleanor kept a protective watch, occasionally squeezing my hand under the table when she sensed my resolve wavering. Across the room at the head table, Grace was in her element, beaming at Kevin, laughing with her parents, playing the role of radiant bride to perfection. Looking at her, no one would suspect the calculating cruelty beneath the beautiful facade. But soon, everyone would know. When the main course was cleared, the wedding planner approached the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for toasts. First, we'll hear from the mother of the groom, Mrs. Pamela Morrison." A spotlight found me as I rose from my seat, champagne glass in hand. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to me with expectation. This was the moment Grace had tried to ruin. The proud mother's speech, a traditional highlight of any wedding. She had wanted me to stand before these guests, humiliated and diminished. Instead, I stood tall, my gaze steady. I approached the microphone with measured steps, my heart pounding but my purpose clear. I looked out at the sea of faces, friends, family, colleagues, and then directly at my son, whose smile was encouraging and trusting. When Kevin was born, I began my voice warm and steady. Robert and I made a promise that we would always protect him, guide him, and tell him the truth, even when that truth was difficult to hear. That's what love is, not just celebration and joy, but honesty and courage when it matters most. I paused, taking a sip of champagne, feeling the weight of what I was about to do. Marriage is built on trust, respect, and showing your true character to the person you love. Without those foundations, no amount of beautiful ceremonies or expensive receptions can create a lasting bond. I saw Grace shifting uncomfortably in her seat, a slight frown crossing her perfect features. Last night, after our rehearsal dinner, my new daughter-in-law Grace came to my hotel room with what she called a peace offering, a cup of tea. What I didn't know then was that the tea was drugged. A murmur ran through the crowd. Kevin's smile faltered, confusion clouding his eyes. While I was unconscious, Grace did something that revealed her true character in a way words never could. With steady hands, I reached up and removed my wig, exposing my completely shaved head to the entire reception. There was an audible gasp from the guests, followed by shocked silence. "This is what I woke up to this morning," I continued, my voice unwavering despite the tears that threatened. "Along with this note." I unfolded Grace's handwritten note, which had been projected onto the large screen used earlier for the couple's photo montage. The cruel words were displayed for everyone to see. "Now you have the look that suits you, you ridiculous old woman. Enjoy the wedding. G." The ballroom erupted in shocked whispers and exclamations. Kevin had gone pale, staring first at my shaved head, then at the note, then at his bride, whose face had drained of color. "That's a lie," Grace said loudly, standing up. "She's making this up because she's jealous and controlling. I would never do something so terrible." "The police officer in the back of the room has my statement and evidence," I replied calmly, "including the cup that will be tested for sedatives, and I believe your bridesmaid Melissa might have something to add about her role in this attack." All eyes turned to Melissa, who seemed to shrink in her seat, her guilt written clearly across her face. "Grace convinced me to help her," Melissa blurted out, crumbling under the scrutiny. "She said it would be a harmless prank, that Pamela was trying to control everything and needed to be put in her place. I didn't know she was going to drug her." The room descended into chaos. Kevin stood frozen, looking between his mother and his new wife with horror dawning on his face. "Grace," he said, his voice barely audible in the commotion, "tell me you didn't do this." Grace's facade finally cracked. Her beautiful features contorted with anger as she realized her plan had backfired catastrophically. "She was going to control our money," Grace shouted, pointing an accusing finger at me. "Your pathetic mother thinks she can keep us on an allowance like children. The trust would have given her oversight of our investments for years. We'd never be truly independent." Her words confirmed everything I had suspected, but hoped wasn't true. "The money," Kevin repeated slowly. "That's what this is about for you, the inheritance." "Don't act so naive," Grace sneered. "Why do you think I agreed to marry you? For your charming personality, your string of failed business ventures? I had a plan, Kevin. We could have been set for life with that $120 million. Your mother was never supposed to be part of our future." The raw truth of her words hung in the air like poison. Kevin's face reflected the exact moment his heart broke, watching the woman he loved reveal herself as a stranger, motivated by greed rather than affection. I replaced my wig with dignity and addressed the stunned guests. I apologize for this difficult moment. As you can understand, the trust transfer of $120 million that was planned as a wedding gift will not be proceeding today. I think we've all seen enough to understand why. Jackson Harrington stepped forward with the leather portfolio. The documents have been revised as requested, Mrs. Morrison. No funds will be transferred to the trust at this time. Grace lunged toward us, her careful poise completely abandoned. You can't do this. We're married now. Kevin is entitled to his inheritance. Actually, Jackson replied with professional calm, the trust was structured very specifically by Robert Morrison. Pamela has complete discretion as trustee, and there are specific clauses regarding attempts to coerce or harm the trustee. You've invalidated any claim by your actions, Mrs. Morrison. Security personnel appeared at Grace's side as she became increasingly hysterical. This isn't over, she shouted, as they gently but firmly escorted her from the ballroom. You'll regret this, all of you. In the shocked silence that followed, Kevin approached me slowly, tears streaming down his face. Without a word, he wrapped his arms around me and broke down completely. I'm so sorry, Mom, he sobbed against my shoulder. I had no idea. I never thought she could. I didn't see who she really was. I held my son tightly, my own tears finally falling. I know, sweetheart. I know. As the guests began to disperse in stunned conversations, the fairy tale wedding ended, not with dancing and celebration, but with the painful truth that sometimes the people we love are not who they appear to be. And sometimes the most loving thing a mother can do is expose that truth, no matter how painful the revelation. The days immediately following the wedding were a blur of legal meetings, police statements, and emotional conversations. The hotel cleared out the wedding guests with remarkable efficiency and discretion, offering complimentary rooms to those too shocked or inebriated to travel. Kevin moved into my guest house, unable to face returning to the penthouse apartment he had shared with Grace. I feel like such a fool, he said repeatedly, sitting at my kitchen table the morning after the wedding, still wearing his rumpled tuxedo shirt. All those red flags I ignored, the way she'd changed the subject whenever I talked about you, how she always seemed more interested in the lifestyle than in me. Love can be blinding, I told him gently. She was very skilled at presenting exactly what you wanted to see. The police investigation proceeded quickly. Grace was arrested for assault and administering a noxious substance, while Melissa provided a full statement in exchange for reduced charges. The teacup tested positive for a prescription sleep medication at a dose 3 times the normal recommendation, enough to ensure I wouldn't wake during the assault, but not enough to cause lasting harm. It was coldly calculated cruelty. More disturbing revelations followed. A background check revealed that Grace had been involved with another wealthy man 3 years earlier, an engagement that ended abruptly with a confidential settlement agreement. My attorney obtained permission to view the sealed records, discovering that Grace had been accused of similar manipulative behavior, including accessing the man's financial accounts without authorization. She's a con artist, Jackson explained during a meeting in my home office. A sophisticated one who targets wealthy individuals, but a con artist nonetheless. You were right to trust your instincts, Pamela. Grace made several desperate attempts to contact both Kevin and me in the week after the wedding. Her messages ranged from tearful apologies, claiming temporary insanity, to vicious threats of public embarrassment if we proceeded with charges. We forwarded everything to our attorneys and the police, strengthening the case against her. Kevin struggled with profound guilt and shame. I brought her into our lives, he said one evening as we sat on the patio of my home. I exposed you to her cruelty. How can you even look at me? You're my son, I said simply. Nothing will ever change that. We've both been deceived by her, and now we'll heal together. That healing began with joint therapy sessions, where Kevin confronted patterns in his relationships that had made him vulnerable to someone like Grace. His grief over his father's death, his feelings of inadequacy compared to Robert's success, his desire for a partner who seemed confident and assured in all the ways he wasn't. All had contributed to Grace's ability to manipulate him. "I've been chasing external validation all my life," he admitted during one particularly intense session. "From Dad, from you, from business associates, and then from Grace. I've never learned to validate myself." It was a powerful insight and the beginning of real growth for my son. For the first time, he began to take genuine interest in the family business, not as a way to access wealth, but as a connection to his father's legacy. He asked questions about how Robert had built the company, the values that had guided his decisions, the mistakes he had made and overcome. Meanwhile, our private family drama became unexpectedly public. Someone at the wedding, likely one of Grace's friends, had recorded my toast and the chaotic aftermath on their phone. The video leaked to social media and went viral with millions of views within days. Local news picked up the story, then national outlets. Suddenly, my bald head and Grace's exposed scheme became fodder for morning talk shows and internet commentary. The attention was overwhelming and unwanted. Reporters camped outside my home. Photographers tried to catch Kevin coming and going. We received hundreds of interview requests, all of which we declined. But amid the intrusion, something unexpected happened. Messages began pouring in from women who had experienced similar betrayals, not always as dramatic as my shaved head, but the same pattern of manipulation, isolation, and cruelty from partners who had presented false faces to the world. Many were older women like me, who had been made to feel invisible or ridiculous for asserting boundaries or protecting themselves. "You stood up there with your bare head and showed the world that dignity can't be stolen," one woman wrote. "I've been hiding my own experience of betrayal for years, ashamed that I was fooled. You've given me courage to speak my truth." These messages affected me deeply. What had happened to me was deeply personal, but the response showed that it had touched something universal. The experience of being diminished, manipulated, and gaslighted, particularly as women age and society increasingly treats them as irrelevant. 3 weeks after the wedding, I received an unusual call from Meredith Lowe, the wig boutique owner who had helped me on that terrible morning. "Pamela, I hope you don't mind me reaching out," she began. "Since your story went public, we've had dozens of women coming into the shop, not just cancer patients, but women who've experienced all kinds of trauma that affected their hair. They're asking for the Pamela, a wig that helps them feel dignified during their most vulnerable moments." She paused before continuing. "I know this is completely out of the blue, but would you consider being the face of a new line of high-quality wigs for women going through life transitions? Many of my clients are facing illness, but others are dealing with stress-related hair loss or aging changes they're not ready to embrace yet. They need to see someone like you, someone who found strength and dignity even when others tried to take it away." My initial reaction was hesitation. I was a private person by nature, and the idea of deliberately stepping into the public eye seemed overwhelming. But the more I considered it, the more I recognized an opportunity to create meaning from my traumatic experience. "I'll do it," I told Meredith, "but with one condition. A portion of proceeds needs to fund resources for women escaping manipulative or abusive relationships, particularly older women who may lack financial independence." This decision marked the beginning of an unexpected new chapter in my life. Working with Meredith, I helped design a line of wigs specifically for women over 50, natural-looking, comfortable, and created with an understanding of how women want to present themselves during vulnerable transitions. We called the line Dignity, a word that had taken on profound meaning for me. Meanwhile, the legal consequences for Grace unfolded. Faced with overwhelming evidence, she accepted a plea deal that included probation, community service, and mandatory counseling. The agreement included a restraining order preventing her from contacting Kevin or me. Grace's professional reputation was destroyed. No one in luxury real estate wanted to work with someone known for such calculated cruelty. Kevin filed for annulment rather than divorce, arguing that the marriage had been entered under false pretenses. The legal process was surprisingly straightforward, given the circumstances and evidence of Grace's true motives. Within 6 months, it was as if the marriage had never legally existed, though the emotional scars would take much longer to heal. As summer turned to fall, I made a significant decision about the family wealth and Kevin's inheritance. After extensive discussions with Jackson and financial advisors, I restructured the trust that Robert had established. Instead of a massive lump sum inheritance, I created a foundation with Kevin as co-director alongside me. The foundation would support causes that reflected our family values: education for underprivileged youth, medical research in pancreatic cancer, and resources for victims of financial exploitation and elder abuse. When I presented the plan to Kevin, his response surprised me. "This is perfect, Mom," he said, studying the proposal with genuine interest. "It's what Dad would have wanted. The money doing good in the world, not just sitting in accounts or being wasted on real estate schemes and sports cars." "You'll still have significant personal resources," I assured him, "just not the excessive wealth that attracts people like Grace." He nodded thoughtfully. "I don't need or want that kind of money anymore. I've been thinking about what really matters, and it's not mansions in Aspen or private jets." He looked up with a new clarity in his eyes. "I want to build something meaningful the way Dad did, not to prove anything to anyone, but because it's the right thing to do." In that moment, I saw Robert in our son in a way I never had before, not in his features, but in his character. The painful experience with Grace had stripped away layers of insecurity and immaturity, revealing the man he was capable of becoming. As for me, I made another surprising choice. When my hair began growing back, I kept it short, a stylish pixie cut that many said suited me better than my previous shoulder-length style. It was a daily reminder that sometimes what others intend as humiliation can become a source of strength and redefinition. The media interest in our story eventually faded, but the Dignity wig line flourished, expanded to include advocacy work and support groups for women rebuilding their lives after betrayal. I found myself speaking at events, sharing my experience not as a victim, but as someone who had refused to be diminished by cruelty. When I stood at that wedding reception and removed my wig, I often told these gatherings I wasn't just exposing what had been done to me. I was reclaiming my power to define myself on my own terms. And Kevin. By the fall, he had moved out of my guest house and into a modest apartment of his own. He began working with a tech incubator that helped young entrepreneurs develop sustainable businesses, finding fulfillment in mentoring others rather than chasing quick success. He started dating again cautiously and thoughtfully, with a new appreciation for substance over appearance. On the 1-year anniversary of what we now referred to as the wedding that wasn't, Kevin and I met for dinner at a quiet restaurant overlooking the city. We hadn't planned the timing specifically, but the date hadn't escaped either of us. A year ago today, I thought my life was taking one direction, and instead it went completely another, Kevin reflected, raising his glass. To unexpected journeys. I clinked my glass against his, and to finding ourselves along the way. Mom, he said, after a moment, his expression serious, I never properly thanked you for what you did that day. It took incredible courage to stand up in front of everyone like that. You saved me from years of manipulation and unhappiness. I did what any mother would do, I replied. Protect her child, even if the threat comes in a beautiful package with a diamond ring. Not any mother, Kevin insisted. A mother with extraordinary strength and dignity. The word made me smile. Dignity. It had become my touchstone, my guiding principle through this unexpected chapter of life. Later that night, alone in my home, I took out the photo albums Robert and I had filled over the years. There we were, young and hopeful with baby Kevin. There were the birthday parties, graduations, family vacations, the tapestry of our life together. And there in the last album was Robert in his final months, thin, but smiling, his hand clasping mine. You'd be proud of him, I said softly to Robert's image. It took a painful detour, but he's finding his way. And you'd be proud of me too, I think. I closed the album with a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. Life had taken me on an unexpected journey, from the humiliation of waking bald on my son's wedding day to discovering reserves of strength I hadn't known I possessed. The woman who had tried to diminish me had instead catalyzed a transformation I never could have anticipated. Have you ever faced a moment when someone tried to shame or humiliate you, only to find unexpected strength in standing your ground? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and transformation. And if you know someone who needs a reminder of their own dignity and worth, share this video with them. Remember that your value is intrinsic and can never be diminished by someone else's cruelty. Thank you for witnessing my journey, and I wish you the courage to stand in your own truth, whatever challenges you may face.